To our third live stream on improving adherence to strength training and how we approach this. We've gone through a ton of information already. If you haven't seen the first two episodes, I would advise you to do so, although probably there's lots of information in each individual episode that you can carry forward into your business and start making your business better right away. But today we'll get right into it, and we're going to be talking about the milestones in between what we've talked about in the first two episodes. So let's get right to it. So by now, if you watch the first two episodes, you know what the elephant in the room is. The elephant in the room of our industry is the fact that very few people are doing the exercises we want them to do. And it's affecting everything about our businesses. Worst case scenario for you, and I guarantee there are people out there that probably, from my past, and we've had people like this come into our businesses, is I went and saw insert your name there, and it didn't help. And the reality about that is, even if you gave them great advice, you gave them great exercises, they didn't do it, they didn't get better, and they're playing the blame game because they're standing in front of another practitioner, they're standing in front of their doctor, they're standing in front of whoever, and they're saying, well, it's not getting better, and they're not being accountable, which we know people can be. So it's really important that we change this, and we don't have things like that damaging our reputation. And it's easy to get complacent. I've said this myself. I've heard a lot of people say it, especially in the last few years when we're talking more and more practitioners about what we're doing. I can't help them if they don't do it. The slap in the face here for all of us is the truth is you're just not helping them. And it doesn't really matter whether it matters that they didn't do their stuff, but if you didn't do any work, this is the thing I realized for myself, because early in my career, I was like, it's a them problem. If they're not doing the work, and then they're going out talking about you or not getting results or whatever it is, you're not helping them. So that's why we talked in the first couple episodes about how to set them up properly and make sure that they're buying in. We're building trust with them. They understand what's going on. They have a meaningful purpose. They're really, they can see the long-term thing. We've set them up properly. We've done really everything we can. And at that point, if they're not going to do their stuff and, we can't hold their hands all the time, because if we do that, then, we're setting them up for failure there too, because they need to become independent. They need to be driven. They need to know the impact of not doing the work. Humans will either chase pleasure or run from fear, run out of fear at least, they'll chase pleasure or avoid pain. And, if they can see that the pain of the future of not doing it, if we can help explain it to them better and make sure they really understand what's going on, then they can have some really good intrinsic motivation to do things. So what we've done so far with all the work that we've done to building trust and doing all that stuff is we've gotten them to be a full participant in their own journey. And that's what's really required. You go to a lot of, clinics and work with practitioners, and you can see some of the clients are, I'm here so you can help me. And it's like, well, that's not really how it works. You need to be a full participation is required by you to be able to get this, because it's a you thing, not me. So we went through buy and trust, the target, focus and mindset, building their why, and amping it up. And really, we're going to talk today about focus and about the mastery part of it, and it'll be fabulous. You'll see. So now that we have their attention, we're going to set it up so that we can have they can see objective progress, and they can really have some ownership. And it's part of the autonomy thing, but it's also part of the mastery thing, the taking on the challenge, the seeing incremental progress. I think one of the things that we've really done wrong is that we look at it like, it's like, okay, when we do our testing, what we've all been taught is like, okay, well, we'll test them every 4 to 6 weeks, and then we'll show progress there. And in between, you do your exercises. And the thing is, obviously, that model's not working, because in between, what'll happen is like, well, I did my exercises for a week, but then I didn't do them for 3 weeks. And there's hardly any progress. And, it's really, we got to set them up properly. And we just have to have a new model that allows them to see what they're doing on a regular basis and be motivated by it. And the precipice for change for me was when I was working in the university system. When you're working in a system like that, and you look at what the athletes, what the clients have access to, it's, they have access to mega facilities, they have access to lots of different services, they have access to lots of different practitioners, they can come in anytime they want. And this was something that I realized, like, this is not happening in the public sector. And it was something that I was driven to bring from the private or elite or university or whatever setting it was into the public space. And I got a lot of resistance at first, because the public space sort of functions differently. Everything's pay by appointment, all that sort of stuff, which we can talk about in other things. But what we're trying to do, and what we're going to talk about today, this whole new prescription model that I'm going to show you, is more aligned with allowing, having that full participation and making sure on a daily basis that we are connecting with the client. Because it was really about, if you're going to bring the university or the elite experience to the public, we need to contact our clients more, we need to have better tracking, and we need to have much better accountability. In the elite system, if you're not doing your stuff, there are real consequences, and there's no hiding, which is a real advantage. And we need to have that as well. And also on the practitioner side, there's no hiding. If you're not doing your work and they're not getting better, there's accountability there too, which, unfortunately in the public system, there really isn't a lot of that right now. So it's something that we're working towards. So there's lots of things to work on there, like reevaluating how we do our sessions and what the client expectations are. We're not going to go into that. That is a whole other realm of things that we could talk about, and we do talk about in our other courses. But today, what the most important part of it is, we're going to talk about establishing better accountability and more frequent progress markers, which are the two things that are really going to affect your clients. And they're realistic to implement quickly, because we can't just tell everybody, like, I can't stand up here and tell you, like, oh, you need to change everything about your business, or your structure and all that sort of stuff. That's just not realistic. What's realistic is to take something, and I've always been about that. Like, I'm sort of my mind looks at chaos and tries to bring it down to the simplest single solution that we can implement, so that people, can really drive change, and there's something that there's effective. So it needs to be simple, it needs to be effective, and it needs to seamlessly just work in the system that you have now. And I think that's what we've come up with. I know for my business, it seamlessly worked into my business. Didn't really change much of how I treat and how I train my clients. I just made some adaptations to the tool, made sure that it didn't take more of my time. And because none of us have more time, right? It's you have the time that you have, and that's so this is the whole goal of this thing, was to do that. So part one, we're going to talk about tracking and progress. And, I'm going to, I probably said this in the other episodes, but the accountability part is really important. Somebody comes in and one of the first things we ask them is like, did you do your exercises? And so often you get, no, I didn't do my stuff. Or you get like, yeah, I did my stuff. Okay. What does that mean? I mean, I've talked to practitioners that have been like, yeah, and then I got to test them to see if they even remember the exercises, because I don't even think they remembered the exercises, let alone did them or whatever. And we have a lot of questions like, oh, which exercise did you do? And how long did you do them for? And how hard did you work? And did you do all the sets? And there are so many questions. I have no idea if you're going to progress or you're not going to progress based on some loose answer that like, yeah, I did my exercises. There's the I did how many sets and repetitions did you do? So, well, I did my 3 sets of 20. Okay. How hard did you work? We really have no information based on the layperson that doesn't have the information we have telling us what they've been through and what they actually managed to achieve. So so we're going to a new model, because this makes a hell of a lot more sense for us as practitioners. It makes a hell of a lot more sense for the end user to be able to track their exercises. So, this model that we've been using, and I had an interesting meeting today with somebody that, talked about the fact that we've both been in the industry for about 28 years. And the drop-off rates in fitness are, 10% of the people after January have stuck to the program, to the things that they're doing. And it was like, what was the other number? It was centered around like 35% of the exercises that we prescribe are actually being done. And in large part because of this whole old model and how it hasn't changed. The model hasn't changed. We've still been using sets and repetitions for those 28 years. So it's really time for change. And it's really time with the technology we have and the expectations of the end users. The end users at this point are very used to having everything tracked. We're tracking hydration, we're tracking sleep, we're tracking stress, we're tracking nutrition, we're tracking breathing, we're tracking O2 sat, anything, but we're not tracking strength because we really haven't had a way to do it efficiently until now. So the new model that we're looking at is that I'm currently using is, instead of using sets and repetitions, we're looking at recording how much force somebody can generate per repetition. We're looking at creating an accumulation score. Every time they generate a certain amount of force, that one repetition builds upon the other one, and they do a full set. So we have an accumulation score for the full set. And then from there, we can have an accumulation score for the whole workout for that exercise. So if I say your accumulation score is 500 pounds per set, and I want you to do 4 sets, so the whole accumulation score for the workout is going to be 2,000 pounds. And then from there, we can create an accumulation score for any number of weeks. When's the next time we're going to see them? We're going to see them in 2 weeks. Okay, I want you to do these exercises twice a week if they're highly intense strength exercises, and that's 2,000. You're going to generate 2,000 pounds of force with that one exercise per workout. So that's over that total. If you can get to 8,000 pounds doing this exercise, then you've done your work essentially. And you can come back and we'll talk about how they prove that and all that sort of stuff. So I thought the easiest way to do this would be just to go through some case studies, because everybody's working on different kinds of clientele. And I want to show how we're going to run through this with different kinds of clients that we see, everything from, we'll do a post ACL surgery, like what stage they're at and what we should be doing with them. and how we're recording this and setting it up, some sort of minor back pain. So this is the thing that we see so often. It's so prevalent. 4 out of 5 people in their lifetime will have some sort of major back event. So everybody's walking around with a little bit of a sore back, and they're often going to see practitioners. How do we solve this problem? How do we track it? How do we make sure they're doing their exercises? And then there's a lot of us people in my age group that they just want to stop feeling like they're sore in the morning, and they stop feeling like they're aging, essentially. And so we need to train them properly, and we need to get them training on a regular basis and really improve that adherence to exercise. That's huge. So we'll go through it one at a time here, but we'll go through a little bit of a reminder of our reconditioning timeline. So our reconditioning timeline from the beginning, where somebody is like severely injured and immobile, all the way to the end, which is high performance training, and the stages in between. So remember that 80% line, that's when people are about 80% rehabilitated from injuries. And the IRP3, which is injury rehab phase 3, is right after that. So they still have these latent injuries that need to be dealt with. And then we start getting into all of the other things that we need to do before somebody is actually really even ready for fitness. And we have to be looking at these things. So your PFP1 is your postural imbalances. So this is pre-fitness phase. Your pre-fitness phase 1 is you're looking at postural imbalances. You're looking at their ability to dissociate in PFP2, PFP3, you're looking at, their biomechanical stability or core stability, depending on, it's sort of morphed into one there. And then PFP4, you're looking at setting an athletic foundation for movement. So we're going through some of the fundamental movements that they need to be able to do before they go off. And if, what's happening very often, and we talked about this in the first episode, is if people are doing things that are appropriate for, past the fitness line, then what's happening is they're getting injured and they're getting kicked right back down to that injury zone again. And it's just happening over and over again. And you don't have to talk to too many people to find out. It's like, oh, how many times you hit the gym, got injured, now you're going to physio, and then a year later, you had the same story. It happened again. And so we want to stop this cycle. And we're going to talk about each phase for each case study and make sure that we're doing the appropriate thing and how to measure it and all that sort of stuff. It's going to be wonderful. You'll see. So first case study is our post ACL. So they are in IRP1. So this is, they're in phase 1. They come out of surgery, and their target is to get to the fitness line, to be able to get back to the activities they love to do. So if they can understand just that, it's not about just gaining your range back and so your knee feels better. It's really going through all of the things that happen, because when you tore your ACL, all of the things that happened after that, the time between the tear and the surgery, and there's a lot of things to do. We're not going to go through the whole thing. We're going to go through the first two phases of what we should be doing and how to set that up properly. So in IRP1, we're working on range of motion, gaining the range of motion back. And the stuff that we should be measuring there is their range, to show them that it's increasing, getting better, or whatever. And, however long that lasts per person, depending on what kind of surgery they got. And those limitations will largely be prescribed by the surgeon. So IRP2, the first thing that we can do that's really good for the client, that gives the client a real insight as to what's going on, is set a comparison target. Okay, how much force can you generate now that we're allowed to generate force without pain, or with a 5 on 10 or less in pain? And then we compare it to the other side. And then, so we can do we can do a one-time repetition, say, okay, you can generate 10 pounds of force with your hamstring, with your leg curl or whatever it is, or leg extension. And with the other one, you can do 50, 70, whatever it is. And now we have something to work towards. We can also, as soon as it's appropriate, to do do the an accumulation score. So how many repetitions can you do before you really start dropping off, and the fatigue sets in, and we can use those numbers too, and get a really good comparison. So setting up your comparison as early as possible is the number one thing that you can do right now. So a lot of times people look at it, it's like, well, they can't really do much, so we're not going to measure it. And to be honest, and early in my career, I felt that way too. It's like, well, the score is going to be so low, it's going to be depressing. No, that's not how it works. It's the score is low so that now, because we measured it on the first day that we could, we start measuring it every day, and they can see that this is changing, because you'll see how we do our prescription allows them to see that change every day and work towards that change every day, and showing incremental change, which is often very hard to show in our business. The other thing in using these objective measures is really important is the fact that we can now set limits and say, like, okay, so at 15 pounds, you're relatively pain-free, but at 20 pounds of force, it's causing you pain. I don't want you to go into pain, whatever your philosophy is on what the rehab process is. You can set limits and say, okay, for today, I want you to stay at 15 pounds or less. And if it starts getting sore there, then we know we're affecting it. So I want you to stop. So having these real measures for them makes a big difference, because now it's about their understanding. They don't understand what we understand about our businesses, right? So they can really buy into, oh, okay, so I can do this. And conversely, oh, hold on, my computer almost died on me there. Excuse the interlude. My computer wasn't even plugged in, so it almost died on me. But I'll continue on. Yeah. So, and conversely, I've had clients who have done the same thing. Like, we go to do some exercises, and I have a little bit of pain. It's like, oh, how much pain is it really? It's it's a 2 or 3. It's like, oh, no, I want you to push harder. And in seeing their biomechanics and seeing what the end result is, because we're the professionals, I can say to them, it's like, yeah, I need you to be at 20 pounds or more. Because you're just not working hard enough to get the result that you're looking for. But so with a post ACL, of course, you're going to have some sort of pain limits there, and it's just something that we're going to track all the time. Now, what's really cool about that is when you're doing accumulation scores and checking off where the drop off is we don't have to prescribe at that point. And by drop off, I mean, so they can generate 15 pounds of force the first 5 times, but then, 6 or 7 or 8, it either starts to get painful or they start to get tired, and you can see it's like, oh, now they can generate 12 and then 8 and then 4. We can see that drop off line. And instead of having to count, well, how many repetitions was it before you got tired? We can just have an accumulation score. And because the way we set up our device is it only accumulates if you can get within a percentage of the threshold that we set. So if they're dropping off, the accumulation stops, and we say, okay, so you got to 150 pounds of accumulation today in that one set. Well, tomorrow, if they get to 160, it's not much of a change, but it's really big in their eyes, and you're not having to count any repetitions ever again. And that was a game changer for me. So yeah, that's a big one. So let's go on to, we're going to go to our low back pain, our typical low back pain case. Most of these people that I'm seeing, and the most people that are around are in IRP3, right? They've maybe they had an injury, and oftentimes the injury itself probably wasn't even back related, but they have some latent injuries going on, and they have back pain, and they're sort of in this IRP3 zone, injury rehab phase 3, and we need to set them up properly. So the first things that we're going to do and set up and measure there are we're going to start to measure their postural stability in isometric. So we're not doing accumulation scores at this point. We're working to resolve their injuries. So we might be prescribing, say, okay, you're going to do these isometric drills because we need to build some tendon strength, and we need to work out some of the scar tissue that's in there, or whatever the philosophy is that you're working with. And we're going to, now we're going to set real thresholds with you. And we want you to work this hard. And again, we're checking the drop off. We're checking, so even if we're doing isometric holds, one of the things that we have with the app is, because the app will display, here, I'm holding the device in my hand and you guys can't see me. This can often be hard to see at times. So put it this way. This is the anchor, and then you have a resistance band. I use resistance bands almost exclusively, and so we create tension on this, and it can be hard to see what the actual display is showing. So what all we have is in the app, and I'll show it to you after, is it displays exactly what's on here in real time. And so if I'm doing an isometric drill with somebody, and I say, okay, I want you to get to 50 pounds, and I want you to hold that to build some endurance in that postural zone, then they can sit there and watch it and try and hold it and see how much. And we can record time at that point too, if we want. And then, we're going to teach them postural. I think this is one of the biggest things. It's a big change, because we had its tendency of giving these postural drills, whether they're from, hands and knees positions to bear crawls and all that sort of stuff. And we never really had a way to measure what was going on with that. But now, because we can use a force dynamometer like the Acculete and with resistance bands and set them up in the different postures we want, is we can start to overload that posture with resistance band, force in any direction we want. And then again, see how long they can hold that posture for, and see when that drop off is. And for our files, which is really important, if you're doing injury rehab, obviously the reportability of this whole thing is saying, okay, so at the beginning, I had a case that was a thoracic instability case. So she had a lot of rib pain, actually, is what she came with. And her spine was, we knew was unstable, and was actually in the years that I was just developing this technology. So we decided to measure it, how much resistant force she could generate. And on the one side that was still sore, the rib side that was still sore, she could generate 4 pounds of force in that isometric. So an isometric hold that was forcing her to turn. So it was an elastic on one side, a resistance band on one side. She was holding a bar, and it was just pulling her. So she had to pull herself straight, and she had to hold that posture. And her full ability to hold that posture for any length of time was 4 pounds. So, it gave us a lot of information. It's okay, we got a long way to go here. But we also have a number to work with. And we can show that over time that this is getting better and better and better. So that's, again, breaking away from that. If our drop off limit is time, she could hold it for a few seconds at 4 pounds, and then she could hold it 6 pounds for 10 seconds. This is great because it's objective. And again, we never have to do another repetition again. And the thing I didn't mention in the last slide, that's at the bottom of both of these slides, is it's one thing to have a force dynamometer that sits in your office and that maybe you use once in a while. It's another thing entirely to set up these parameters, measure what they should be doing, and then get this technology into their hands. So, okay, now go take this Acculete and do your exercises, the ones that I just showed you with the limitations that I just set up. And we'll talk about setting all of those limitations up and the programming a little later in this broadcast. But getting the technology into their hands so that when they do the exercises, they have the numbers. And it's one of the biggest problems that we identified is the force dynamometers are typically too expensive. You can't have a $20,000, if the force dynamometer is $1,500 or $1,000, or or even if it's slightly cheaper, you can have 20 of those lying around to lend to clients or to sell to clients because they're not going to buy them. They needed to be at a price point that was actually feasible for this, and that's what we created. So. Okay, so we'll go from that part one. So then we go into part two with this. As the low back pain client gets better and better, we move into phase two, which, you probably don't remember from the first slide, but PFP1 is about postural imbalances. So we measure their postural imbalances. So now, because they're, typically in this, they're in less pain, they're not quite as acute, which was the whole reason why they showed up in the first place. We can start looking at some of their postural imbalances, or how much force can you generate rotating this way versus rotating that way? How much force can you generate in, rotation of your hip or hip flexion or whatever? But measuring both sides, everything that we feel is related to the problem they came to us with, and start to see, like, I had a case where, we're measuring two things. We're measuring the force generation, right? Which is the one-time force. So it's just one repetition, that typical manual muscle testing. We'll get a number for that. And then we're measuring their FGC, which is their force generation capacity. So how many repetitions can you do? Of course, we're not counting repetitions, but how much force can you accumulate before you really start to drop off? In that one case, we're doing hamstring curls. He can generate 30 pounds of force. It was the position that I put him in. It was a difficult position. You could generate 30 pounds of force on one leg and 35 pounds of force on the other leg. And, that's a bit of a difference, but whatever. It's not a huge difference. I'm not sure I would have been able to tell if I tested it manually. But then we continue on to test his FGC, and on the side that he could generate 30 pounds of force, his FGC was 450 pounds. On the side that he could generate 35 pounds of force, he could generate 650 pounds. And this is a pretty well-trained athlete, plays all kinds of different, sort of an outdoor athlete. And I looked at this and I was like, oh, that's really off. And it was one of the early times that I started measuring FGC. So as a practitioner, I was like, wait, here's some information that I don't even know, that I didn't know, And he was like, oh, yeah, that's true. 2 years ago, I tore my hamstring. And he failed to tell me that when he started the program and stuff like that. And it was the first time we really noticed it, because if you measured him in a one-off hamstring strength, it didn't really show, but his drop-off was really high compared to the other side. So again, from the motivational stuff that we talked about in the first two episodes, he, I didn't have to say anything to him. He looked at that and was like, oh, I need to change this. And I was like, yeah, that's probably a good idea. We've already prescribed you the exercise anyway. You know what to do. Go and do the work. So, so for exactly a case like that, because he was a low back pain case that showed up, and then we're working through the process with him, and this is exactly where he was. And so we prescribed, when I prescribed his, instead of prescribing with sets and repetitions, we gave him an Accolade that he'd go off and train with on his own. And he had the minimum force generation per repetition that he had to produce, which, that 30-pound mark, whatever it was. I don't remember exactly what it was. And then setting him a target for, okay, you have to get to at least this much FGC per set. And then the WFGC, which is the force generation per workout, based on how many sets I want them to do. You have to get to that each time you train, and I want you to do it X amount of times a week. And again, it's this thing where now your client is looking at it and like, oh, okay, so these are the numbers I have to get to, and they fully understand what's going on. And they never have to count another repetition, because it's like, how many did you do? Doesn't really matter. Look at how much you actually produced. And you'll know if you've done all the work or not, And I've had people come back and say like, oh, when I was with you, I could do this much work, but man, that was a lot of work when I got home to try and do it on my own. And I was like, oh, really interesting. Okay, let's test it out again. And it seemed to be okay. And in going through the process of testing it out again, I realized, oh, I wasn't doing it right. Oh, okay. So, next time this happens, if you're seeing something from a numbers perspective that's very different than what we did in-house, then let me know so that we can regulate the problem as early as possible. So, another really good thing that comes with working with objective stuff. And then having them, having, again, I can't stress this enough. The change that we're looking for is getting the technology into their hands so that they can work with the numbers and they can be, proud of the work they did and face the challenge. And, the person I was meeting with today, we talked about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation and how the Accolade actually provides both. The more types of motivation we can provide for our clients, the better, and the more they're going to stick to the program. So then we go from that to the stopping aging. So if we look at a person like that, they're, if they don't have latent injuries, very rare, most of the time they're starting in IRP3 to some degree, but maybe not. Let's just assume for this person, they're in PFP1. And their target is beyond fitness, and if we can demonstrate, even if it's this timeline to them, they can see that there's a bit of work involved to get all the way to where they want to be. So the first things we do, as like, we're starting with the low back pain person, we're starting a stage earlier. Okay, we're measuring FG for their imbalances and getting some FGC scores. And setting up their sets and repetitions and how much work they need to do. And the other thing we can do with them is the TFGC. So is that, for total workouts, I'm going to give you these 5 exercises to do. Here are all your sets and repetitions, or here are all your parameters with the amount of sets that I want you to do, and what your FGC is for every set. Well, now I can actually give a score too at the bottom that says like, okay, this workout based on the exercises that I've provided with you is you need to generate, 15,000 pounds of force for this entire workout. And it's again, another target to work towards. They're working towards a target per set, and that gives them information. They're working towards a target per workout per exercise, and that gives them information. And then, now it's like, a lot of my workouts that I do personally are all set on a TFGC. So it's just like, okay, I'm going to do these drills and I'm not going to stop until I get to 30,000 pounds of force. And because I know that that's a lot of work and it's worth it for me to do it. And, it's one of the goals that I have set for myself. And it's, when you see that number, you're at 25,000 or 26,000 and you're really tired. It's really not that far. You've come pretty far. It's like, okay, I'm just going to push myself to the end because there's that number right there that's telling me like you haven't gotten to where you're supposed to yet. So it's really, really good stuff for me. So we go through the same thing that we did with our low back pain, at least to start with. And then we go to PFP2. So in PFP2, we're talking about, and again, these phases, there's some crossover, obviously, and some things that we can do if we're measuring imbalances and we're doing some of this stuff at the same time. So this fundamental dissociation is like, okay, so we don't want you to have back pain when you're in the fitness zone. So can you control your low back position under stress? So the first things we do is like, well, do you have control of your low back position? A lot of people don't. They just don't. They don't have control of that. And almost every single person that I evaluate, I bring them in. If it's appropriate for that, they're past IRP3, and we start working with imbalances, and we start working with dissociation right away. Well, how much control do you have of your back? I have no control. Okay, so we're not measuring anything yet until you can have a little bit of control of what's going on. Okay, so now I can position my back, and I know exactly what you're talking about, and I can dissociate my back from the rest of my spine. Perfect. Okay, good. Too often practitioners are doing this, and that's it. Okay, let's go do some deadlifts. And it's like, whoa, wait a second. You haven't even brushed the surface on what we could be doing with this person to make sure that they have control under stress. So UIS there is under increasing stress philosophy I use all the time. So, okay, you can dissociate, and that's great. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply stress in all kinds of different directions. And I'll start with isometric stress, and I'll move to concentric stress, so a moving type of drill. But the isometric stress will be, if I have their arms out like this and I have a resistance band pulling off to the side, my acculeates, my hands, I'm mirrored in the screen here. So my acculeates anchored off to the side, and I'm getting a number for how much force that person can generate in a rotation, and then still be able to dissociate their lower back. If you've never done these tests before, and some of the more basic ones, I might just have an elastic resistance band out to the side, and so it's pulling them this way, and they have to keep themselves straight and monitor their posture, and in that, under a little bit of stress, be able to show me that they have control of their lower back. They can reposition it whenever they want. It's not just frozen, and that's super important, that dissociation exists through stress. So one of the earliest things that I do, and one of the things that I talk through the entire process in our whole course, is all the different kinds of stress that we can provide and make sure that person has dissociative control. I mean, shoulders, you use shoulder posture like that. And like, okay, you can get yourself into this posture. Okay, let's apply stress, pull an elastic here like this, and see if you can still hold that posture. Let's pull across this way and see if you can still hold that posture. So it's really important that we start with isometric stuff like that. And then, we're not done there. We have to go from that to some sort of concentric or eccentric movements where, if, back to our rotational drill where it's pulling off to the side, you have a person standing like this, and they have control. It's like, okay, let's do some sort of chopping motion so that we can see that with shoulder movement and the changing stress, because the elastic's pulling off to the side, that you still have dissociative control. I get them to do movements, and then I get them to pause at some point or show me that through the movement that they still have control of what's going on, and they don't feel like they're overwhelmed or they're frozen, which is one of the things. And we talk about that. We talk about it in the course, is how to identify if they're actually really frozen or if they have control. So it's really important that we do that. And we do this, setting up the same thing. That's when we talk about a simple, efficient solution. We're doing the same thing over. Instead of just providing sets and repetitions, it's FG per repetition. We're setting up their FGC, per set, and then their WFGC, which is per workout for that exercise, and then we can give them a total at the end for the entire workout. So moving past, I sort of went into this a little bit here, but moving past just dissociation, now we go into what I call biomechanical stability. It's sort of a mix between that dissociative control and core work, where we're going into some of these more advanced drills where they're, having to stabilize against some really strong force and show me that they have that biomechanical stability. Standing on one leg with a resistance band, pulling them into rotation and then pulling themselves back out, and having that stability and not losing control of what's going on, not losing control of their, their ability to adjust their low back position or their posture. And this is the biomechanical control part, is what I alluded to, like what we go through and how we measure all this stuff before we do other movements like squatting, lifting, pushing, pulling, whatever. The biomechanical stability, there's a ton of stuff that we can do. In the past, what's always been really interesting is the biomechanical stability stuff. I'd give my brother lives across the country, and he'll call me up and I need some exercises, and he had back pain for a while there, and so I gave him some stuff to do, and he's a gym guy. He likes to go in there and do some some of the just basic lifts and stuff like that. And he came back and said, I can't do these drills at the gym. I was like, and this is before we had the Aculeats, and this is years ago. And I was like, what do you mean you can't do these drills at the gym? And he's like, well, I feel silly. I feel silly doing the drill. So because it doesn't look like I'm doing anything, or it's a weird drill. And I'm like, yeah, I know it's a weird drill, but you need to do it. Well, what's transitioned now that we can measure everything is really interesting. Is they're no longer weird drills, right? They're all of a sudden there's a number associated with it. And it's like, okay, do you have control at 20 pounds? Good. Do you have control at 30, 40, 50, 60? Becomes some really intense drills that have the right focus. So when we talked, and I didn't allude to this earlier, but we're talking right now about or going into this biomechanical stability and the dissociation. It's what are we focused on? So our target mindset and focus, the focus part is right down to what I call working the weakest link. So we're working on creating a chain of events, right, for a movement that they need to be able to do. What's the weakest link? And this is what we need to focus on. This is where our numbers are important. And this is what we need to build on. And you can get the people that are, maybe more reluctant to do, these silly little drills that we give them to build their biomechanical stability. And now because there's numbers involved, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, I can do this. And when their buddy says to them, oh, what's that silly drill? Hey, you try this and see what kind of numbers you can produce and have control of what's going on. And then people start to realize what biomechanical control really is. And, if we can help more people understand that, then, we can affect global back pain, and that would be phenomenal. So, so the exercise that I have as an example there is a top crane. So, when you look at somebody's, which way am I going to turn here? Back up like that. Somebody's posture here, I can even go here. We look at what they can do with their low back, what position they're in, and teaching them about neutral spine and things like that. Back up a bit. And then thoracic position, all that sort of stuff. Okay, that's great. You can hold this. Now, top crane. So this is the crane position that I talk about. It's just like a mechanical crane. You're just sort of standing in this position here. But the top means the resistance band is going up. And you can use a cable, you can use whatever. But I like to use a resistance band because it's anchored by the Aculeats. And when they pull down into this position, they can get a number for how much force they can generate down like this and still have control of what's going on. A lot of people, as soon as they have force that they generate like this, boom, their posture changes, right? And as soon as there's even a little bit of stress, the posture changes. And what's really, you can take, I've taken some really highly trained athletes and that feel like, oh yeah, it's not perfect, but whatever. And as soon as we start to measure it, and as soon as we start to show them where they're breaking down, it's like, oh, okay, the number is really the driver for them, and they can really buy into what's going on there. So, and then so for that drill, I can set up that drill isometrically. have them hold it for a length of time. They're working to hold that for a length of time. And, so I give them 8-second pauses. So they have to hold it there for 8 seconds fairly intensely. And at the 4-second mark, they have to demonstrate that they can still have control of their lower back or whatever postural problem they were having. And then I move from that to, I might just do it as a chopping drill. And again, they have to do the same thing. They have to be able to show that, they have control of this. And you honestly, once you get past the sort of isometric part of it, they start to have much better control. If you're doing it to a high enough intensity, they have the control that can really, now they can demonstrate and they feel for themselves right to the point where they can actually, show their friends like, oh no, this is what you need to be able to do. So it's a good marker for them. So then we talk about the accountability part. So it's great to have this prescription model, and but accountability, what's really interesting about accountability, I find, is that accountability should have 3 options. So in the past, they come in, did you do your exercises? Maybe it's a yes, no. If it's no, okay, well, you didn't do your exercises. I didn't really help you find a way to be motivated about it either. So slap in the face for me too. But okay, now we're in a situation where we've prescribed them all this stuff. We've put the technology into their hands. And then from that, they went and did all their stuff. It all got recorded, and they come back. And there's essentially 2 options. They come back and say, yep, I did my exercises. Of course, if they didn't do their exercises, there's nothing on the app. So whatever. Let's just move past that and say that they did their exercises. Yep, I did my exercises. Perfect. Where are we at? How are we doing? Whatever. We're progressing. Great. Let's keep going. Everything's wonderful. Perfect. But there's a second option. And I think this is really important for practitioners, to talk about. They come back. I did all my stuff the way you told me to do it, with all the parameters, whatever, and you're not getting better. You're not improving. Well, maybe the problem is me. Maybe the problem is I misidentified something. I'm not giving you the right stuff. And there should be accountability on the practitioner side of things. There should be some accountability both ways. So that's really important to me. And this technology can allow us to have that accountability on both sides. So let's talk about the actual prescription itself. So this is just a mock exercise exercise prescription. Can you guys tell me actually if you can see my pointer? Can you see my pointer there, or is it just a blank screen? Oh, you don't see it. Okay. Blank. Okay, perfect. So, well, let's just look at the first exercise. So the standing pull. So what we have there, so the square underneath there, you can, whether you have a library of pictures or you still like me, I actually get my clients to handwrite their notes and all that sort of stuff. There's a memory reason for that I do that. So it's not 100% digital on purpose, but it's something that we're working towards having with our app. But in any case, this is the prescription model. So you have your standing pull, a picture of it, maybe a little video of it or something like that. And then what we give them is their force generation per repetition. So in this case, I just mocked some numbers there. In their pull, they can generate 40 pounds. Their force per set, for each set, they could get to around 10 pounds, something like that, around 10 repetitions, which we don't really care how many it was, but they could get to 400 pounds every time they did it. So we say, okay, I want you to do 4 sets of that exercise every time you work out. And that gives us a FGC of 1600. Perfect. Then we go to the second exercise, standing hip rotation. You can generate 60 pounds. That's enormous for that exercise. I don't know why it's so high. But anyway, and they, their FGC was 750, their WFGC 3000. And we go through this whole thing, and we have all of these exercises set up for them. And our TFG at the bottom, or TFGC, is just over 16,000 pounds of force. And now this person can go off and record everything they did. And it's really important that we know this number, because when it comes to, and this is how we created our app, there are other apps out there. The whole reason we created this is because the other apps were pretty arduous when it came to doing this sort of stuff. But we wanted to set up a goal. So, the front page of our app tells us, how many days you have left to do your goal, how much you've achieved already, how much you have to do each day to achieve your goal, and so on and so forth. And I'm just going to walk you through how it should be set up. Whatever device you're working, or whatever, if you can find if you already have a device and it has this functionality, this is how you want to set it up. So essentially you start with setting up your adding a goal. So you set up a goal. My clients, I typically see them every 2 weeks. So, if I see them today and I'm going to see them in 2 weeks from now, then I'll set up my goal for the 2 weeks. And if, in this example, I had set up an exercise where it all had added up to about 80,000 pounds of work that they needed to do over that 2 week period. And so then we just set that goal. And then they go and do the workout on their own. And like I said before, when we're looking at the display on the app, again, whatever force dynamometer you're using, whether it's the Accolite or a different one, oftentimes it's attached somewhere else. It's hard to see the screen, right? It's nice to have a wonderful screen on there, but most of the time you're not going to be able to see it, so it doesn't really matter. What you need is to have it on, usually the individual's phone is probably the best one, because then they're going to go off and do it on their own, which is incidentally for us, the user app is free, so that your client can just access it and be able to show the display and follow and save it and all that sort of stuff. They shouldn't need to have to pay for that. So, so they go and they do their exercises. And what I talked about earlier is, if you look at this screen on, it's my left, I hope it's your left too, that what I'm trying to show there is, like, if they don't reach the minimum, so you see the load now is actually how much force they're generating at the time, so they can see live in real time how much force they're generating. If it's not within a certain percentage, and I think right now we're set to 15, and we should have some adjustability there as we go. So you can, set it to whatever their max is, which is sort of the threshold we're looking for. If they don't get anywhere near the threshold, then they won't get any accumulation score at all. It just sort of remains at zero. So this is what's quasi forcing them to work hard enough and make sure that they're, doing at the intensity we need them to do. Moving from there, you can see here on the left-hand side that the repetitions, were set at 40. They wanted to be, at or above or close to 40. Did enough repetitions to get to 460 pounds, and that was for the first set. Perfect. Now we reset the device to do the second set, and the second set represented here on your right is now, again, they got to 430 for the second set, and now we have this working total as we're moving along. And then the most important part is, logging their progress and showing the proof. So, here they did, I had just set this up. So they did their 856 pounds of force for that workout. Their goal is 80,000 pounds. So now that, what the app is telling them on the bottom right of the black screen with the circle there is actually for that day they needed to generate 5,700 pounds of force, not 856. So they should probably do more work. And then on the other side is when they do complete the goal and they finish the 80,000 pounds, they can log it, and you can see here on the left that these are completed goals, like the amount of time that was set, how much force they needed to generate, and ultimately that's the proof you can walk back to a practitioner with and show that you actually did the work that you were mandated to do. So the next problem is you don't have an Acculate. And probably for a lot of you, if you've hunted around for force dynamometers, it sounds pretty expensive. Because not only do you have to have one for yourself, but now you have to have multiple devices for your clients. And so this is our solution. Our solution is to make the device affordable enough to have multiple of, make the device trackable so you can, if you want to lend it to your clients, you can, especially if it's in-house or something like that. But you can also rent it or sell it to them. And for, whether it's the price you bought it for or, something higher, you want to make some money on it, that's totally fine with us. It's another very small revenue source, but it's a revenue source for you, and we all need extras of those. So here's the offer. The thing that we're offering right now, it's because we're in early phases, and we want to really make sure that this idea and the education gets out there, and we're looking at changing the model and helping as many people as possible. This is what we're setting up to do. So the first thing is to excuse me, to transform your client's outcome is the whole educational piece. So what comes with this whole package is the stuff that we talked about in these 3 episodes, but really flushed out, like with your templates on how to set up your free consultation if you want to set that up, and how to set up your exercise programs, and what exercises you should be doing, and how to measure biomechanical stability in detail, going through case studies and doing everything that we need to do to help you become really proficient at not just this prescription, but making sure that all the exercises that you are prescribing, how to measure them and that they're working properly for you. So this is, intro to force-based training is the first course that comes with it. Maximizing buy-in and trust is another full course. So we went through a bit of it in an hour. There is a lot to talk about there. There's a lot that we can set up for you and help you setting up meaningful goals. Again, it's this, we talked about it for an hour, or we talked about it in an hour session. We talked about it for a little while. It's a course in itself. And then mastering the art of tracking your clients. This is how you do your exercise prescription, and how you really get really good results using this technology. So that's the first part of the offer. The second is access to our resources. So essentially, as we build our library over time, you'll have access to all the new information, where we're reviewing other people's case studies and producing that for you, and you can have it in the video library. This kind of stuff is really, it's priceless, because it's a wealth of new information that we're going to be gathering based on, there's so much we don't know. There's so much we don't know about how much force people should be generating over a period of time, over weeks, months, whatever, to remain healthy and strong and all that sort of stuff. So as we build that library of information and gather data and talk to more people, it's an ongoing thing for you to have access to. That is, it's a wealth of information that you won't really find anywhere else. And the other thing we do that's included in all of this is monthly coaching. So getting online and you got questions, you want to answer them live, you want to present some stuff that you're having an issue with, and we'll walk you through it. No problem at all. And the third thing is you get 3 devices that comes with this. So you get a practitioner device that you can use on your everyday practice. Plus, you get 2 trackable devices that you can rent or sell to your clients, so that you can track what's going on. And that's really a starter kit to get you going. And if you know, oftentimes getting into programs like this, and just like me, I'm exactly the same way. It's like, okay, what's the risk here? I don't, like I watched the 3 episodes. It's great. The information seems good. But what if I don't like the device? Doesn't work for me. Whatever. We're a no hassle group. So 45 days. Yeah, you don't like it. Okay. Well, we'll give you your money back, and no problem at all. So no questions asked. It's not the kind of thing that I like to do, is hide things in the fine print. If it's not a program for you and you're not going to use it, then we'll take it back, and there'll definitely be somebody else that will use it. So no problem there. And for all of this, all of that stuff put together, it's a lot of hours of work. It's a lot of information. These things typically go for, each course goes for, we put very conservative numbers in there. You don't get a lot of continuing education courses, because you can get the continuing education credits for all of these courses. There's 150 for this and 250 for that. And, it's a lot of access to a lot of stuff. And it's worth, just under $2,500 US. But because we're starting out right now, and we want to really get this information into people's hands and really start helping as many people as possible, we're selling this for $529 is an initial payment. You get your 3 devices, and then you pay $47 a month, which is, in our industry is it's not, comparatively, it's half the price of everybody else at the very least. And it allows you to have access to all of that sort of stuff. So, it's really a no-brainer. It's saving you $1,400. You get 3 devices. Just the amount you save, typically you'll just get 1 device. You really can't get 1 device now. I mean, there are some devices that you can buy out of the States that are $600, $700, $800. Most of them are in the if not over $1,000. Some of them are into the multiple thousands of dollars. So our device is simple, functions really well. It's really strong. It's good for up to 200 kilograms of force. Nobody's going to break that. Ultra safe to use. You can get it into a client's hand and not worry about it at all. So if you're interested in it, this is the web address you have to go to for that particular offer. That's not the offer that you'll see on our website right now. This is the place you need to go. So I will leave that up because I believe it's the questions section. So if there are any questions or comments, that's absolutely, I'm here. I know we're over time by about 10 minutes. But absolutely, any comments, feedback, anything else that you think you'd really want to hear about or anything like that, I'm more than willing to share with you. So I'll maximize this so it's easy to see the web address, so you know exactly where to go, because we'll end the live stream. And I want to thank you, especially if you watched all 3 episodes. If you haven't watched all 3 episodes, then you definitely want to get on there and watch the other 2. There's a ton of information out there that we've put out there that's really going to help you build your business and do a better job with clients. And I'm passionate about helping other physical health practitioners feel and be more professional and be viewed as more professional, and that's part of the whole design of this program. So I hope to see you on the other side. I know that you're going to love working with Aculete. And it's going to be something that, our first full course is going to be delivered in March. So if you can get this pre-sale now, you'll have access to the devices and everything that comes out in March, and will get delivered to you. This pre-sale price won't last very long. I know people always say that, but it won't, because we just can't keep it at that price. So if you want to get in, then get in now, and it's really a no-brainer to make your business much, much better in the future. So for now, I'm going to sign off and end the live stream. And if you have any questions, you can contact us at greg@acculate.com or info@acculate.com, and we're more than happy to help.